Hello, hi there. In this video, what we're going to be doing is introducing Listening Part C. I'll give you an idea of the format and what to expect. Here is our contents, task and timings, question type, some useful skills and some useful advice. We're not going to go too deeply into any kind of technique or anything here today, but I'll be able to give you a sense of what you can expect from it. Okay, so let's talk about the task and the timings. Let's switch to the study document. All right, so in terms of the task, you're going to listen to two long-ish audios. Okay, they're going to be about 5 minutes long, something like that, around 5 minutes long. Okay, so those audios, they're either going to be one, an interview with a healthcare professional, or it's going to be a presentation by a healthcare professional. Okay, so you can see that there's a big difference between those two. The first one is a dialogue, and so the second one is a monologue. And I'll tell you a little bit about that later on. Okay, so they're about 5 minutes long, and for each one you have 6 questions per audio. Okay, 6 questions per audio. Before each audio begins, you've got 90 seconds to review the 6 questions. Okay, so 90 seconds to review 6 questions, then you'd have the audio, then you have 90 seconds to review 6 questions, and then you have the audio. So you've got 12 questions in total. Okay. Now, the kind of topics that you can expect to hear, you can expect to hear experiences, research findings, stories about patients, updates on treatment options. Okay, these are the kind of things that you're going to hear. Okay, and as a result, there's quite a varied vocabulary. Okay, there's quite a varied vocabulary in Part C. Okay, and that's quite difficult. Okay, and I'll talk about useful advice and useful skills in a moment. But that's basically what you can expect. There are going to be 2 longish audios, about 5 minutes long. There'll probably be an interview and a presentation. You'll get 6 questions per audio, 90 seconds per audio to review the 6 questions. So you're going to score out of 12 in total. And you can expect quite a varied topic list. People talking about experiences they've had of specific illnesses, diseases, patients, research that's been done, studies that have been done, and stories, updates, etc. And it's going to be quite varied. There's going to be a lot of opinions in there, and there's going to be data in there, descriptions of situations and of conditions. Okay, so quite a lot of different stuff to find in there. Let's talk a little bit about the questions themselves. Okay, the questions. So they are multiple choice questions. All right, they're multiple choice questions. They are what we would say is they're MCQ 3. Okay, MCQ 3 is what we would say. Okay, so what that means is that there are 3 options available, and here is what a typical question looks like. Okay, you've got 6 questions like this. All right, so like other multiple choice questions in OET, you've got this, which is called the question stem. Okay, and then you've got your 3 answer options here. Okay, now the trickiness with this comes with a couple of different things. Okay, one, when you're using that preparation time, it's a bit tricky to know what to look at in the 90 seconds. So that's the first thing. And there are some very specific things that SET English think that you should do, which we think are very helpful. As I say, this is not a technique video. But the problem that you have is that these three options can seem really similar. Okay, the three options can seem really similar. Here you can see because. Okay, so not only is the language sometimes similar between three, but also the ideas can seem quite similar sometimes. So ideas can seem similar, and also often in listening part C, a big challenge is that it seems like all three options get mentioned. Okay, they're all mentioned. So it might mention different social groups. It might mention that people don't realize they're often infected. They might mention that its impact is severe. You might hear language in the audio that matches to that language in the question stem, in the answer options. But the problem for you is, first of all, you've got to differentiate and sort between those three options to see which ones are accurately matching the text. But then you've also got to say, well, if I do choose them, do they answer the question stem? Because it might say social groups are affected, but is that why it's a neglected disease? Okay, it might say its impact is severe, but is it a neglected disease because of that? So those are the main challenges, I think, in terms of listening part C. These are the questions, okay? The options seem similar and they're often all mentioned. So you've got to be able to listen to all of those options being mentioned, say which ones are accurate and which ones are not, and then say this one answers the question and the others don't. So you've got a lot to do there. Okay, useful skills. Here's some advice from me about what I think you should develop and what you should practice. And this is the kind of things that you can do with SET English. Okay, first of all, improve your vocabulary. Everybody should be doing this all the time. Doesn't matter if it's listening or reading, just keep improving your vocabulary. Make a note of it, return to it, review it. Okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. Keyword analysis is a really important part of any strategy that you're going to use for listening part C. And I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let's take these notes off. Let's take these away. And what we'll do is we'll zoom in just a little bit so we can see the vocabulary a bit better. Okay, so we're being asked, why does Dr. Robson regard Chagas as a neglected disease? Now, I am expecting A, B, and C to all be mentioned in the audio. Okay, I'm expecting all of them to be mentioned. So if I want to be able to choose an answer as accurate, I need to know, have I heard it? And was it correct? Okay, did it match what it says in the question stem, in the answer option? Is what I've got in the answer option the same as what it says in the audio? I've got to know that. That's the first question I've got to answer. The second question I've got to know is, does it answer the question? Is that why Chagas is a neglected disease? So I need to differentiate between A, B, and C. I need to say, what's the difference? How do I know option A is being talked about? Okay, so first of all, I'd be looking for social groups. So social groups would be maybe elderly people, maybe people of the same ethnicity, maybe it's people who work in the same kind of job. These are just ways of grouping people together. So I'm expecting if A is mentioned, that they will mention a number of different groups of people. And if I hear those different groups of people, I'll say, yes, I can hear A. Now, is A the answer for this? That's what I'm going to do. B, patients don't realize they're infected. don't realize they're infected, that's what I'm going to listen for. If I hear something in the audio that says, oh, I'm not sure if people don't always know that they've got the problem, that Chagas is in their body, etc. I'll think, now they've mentioned B. Do I think that's why it's neglected? And then C, its impact is severe. Okay, if I hear a severe impact, it affects people greatly. People are knocked for six by it. I'll think, there's option C. I've heard it. And then I'll think, does it answer the question stem? All right. So I've got to be able in my 90 seconds to identify these keywords for listening. And that's not an easy thing to do. But I recommend that that's one of the things that you have a look at. Okay. Next, signpost recognition. I mentioned earlier, if we go back up, I mentioned earlier that sometimes we've got interviews and sometimes we've got presentations. Okay. Well, in interviews, the signposts, they are things that tell us that an answer is coming. They're really easy because in the interview, it will say something like, so can you tell me why Chagas is a neglected disease? And then you think, oh, I'm in the right place. But when it comes to the presentation, you don't have an interviewer jumping in and giving signposts. So you need to be able to recognize things like a shift in the tone of the voice, or a pause, or linking phrases. In terms of this, now regarding that, all right, you need to be able to switch between the previous question and the next question. And that's a difficult thing to do. Okay, so these are really good skills for listening part C. Now, in terms of some advice, my first piece of advice is don't just go to a training or do mock tests and think that's enough. That's not enough. General English plays a really big role in this, and general listening skills play a big role. You need to get lots of experience. You can't expect to go to a listening test and do well in it if you don't do much listening. Okay? The more listening you do, the better your skills will be. All right? So there are loads of podcasts, dramas, documentaries, loads of different things which enable you to develop your vocabulary and to develop your experience of listening. All right. The next thing is listen to different accents. In OET, you're going to hear Australian, American, and then a whole range of British accents, Liverpudlian accents, people from Bristol, people from Scotland, people from Ireland, Northern Ireland. You're going to hear lots of those kinds of accents that come from the UK or Ireland, Scotland, Australia, Canadian, American, lots of different accents. And people always mention that causes difficulty, especially with Australian. Okay, and another piece of advice would be, after you do your practice, look at the transcripts. Look at the phrasing that meant that you got the answer or that you didn't get the answer. You can learn a lot from the way that they're structured, the way that they use distractors, the way they use signposts. There's so much you can learn about it. So that's listening part C anyway. This isn't a strategy or technique video. It's just supposed to introduce what it's like and what you can expect when you're doing it. So hopefully it was helpful. I'll see you soon. Good luck. Bye-bye.